Thanks for staying with us on The Real Story. A new mandate by President Biden is getting mixed reaction here in Connecticut. It states that private companies who have at least 100 employees will need to require COVID-19 vaccinations or require regular testing for employees who won't get the shot. In fact, it should impact more than 80 million Americans who remain unvaccinated. But it raises a lot of questions for businesses. How will this be implemented? What are the penalties if they don't comply? Is there a system to help them verify vaccines? What happens if they have an employee who won't comply? A lot to talk about and think about and consider. Already Arizona suing over the mandate. It's certainly top of mind for a lot of businesses here in Connecticut. So we want to talk about it with the editor of the Hartford Business Journal, Greg Bordonaro. Good morning and welcome to The Real Story.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Greg, we're going to talk about that in a moment. But first, I just want to get to know you a bit. You all do such a great job at HBJ. I read you all a lot. How did you come to your position here? How long have you been with the Journal?
Yeah, I've actually been at HBJ since 2008. This was my first job out of college. I worked at the Hartford Current in college, both in an internship and part-time in my sophomore, junior, senior years. Then in May 2008, right when the financial crisis hit, I happened to get a business journalism job, which I said I'd never do, but I fell in love with business journalism right away. Eventually got my MBA at the University of Hartford. I went to UConn for undergrad, and then I became editor of HBJ in 2014 or 15. Business journalism to me is a great place to be right now. The news media industry in general has been going through tough times for, I said about a decade, but business journalism is a good place to be. There's business journals in all cities across the country. And frankly, we're coming out of this pandemic, HBJ, with a bigger newsroom than when we started with. So, it's a good growing, there are job growth opportunities in media still.
That is fascinating. Is it because of, and especially in Connecticut, the interest and the want out there for business news, especially in a place like Connecticut?
Yeah, Hartford has a lot of major companies. It's got a lot of major mid-sized companies. It's got a lot of professional services firms, banks, law firms, accounting firms, which have actually all done well throughout the pandemic, while the broader economy has struggled. Those are our sort of core readers and advertisers. So they've remained strong through the pandemic, which has helped us. I mean, we felt it early on during the pandemic, but we also went through an ownership change that brought some new momentum to the company as well.
Different, certainly, from the Hartford Current. You and I were just talking about this a second ago, and I know I've had Hartford Current reporters and people on here talking about, the gutting of the Hartford Current and what's going on there. How important is local publications in this day and age for people to get their knowledge and their resources and information from, would you say?
Sure. And obviously the news media has struggled, particularly the Hartford Current. A lot of that has to do with the corporate ownership that they're under. There's other areas where they've been, they've struggled as well locally. But local news is sort of the lifeblood of journalism, if you ask me. National news outlets, there's so many different national news outlets you could get your national government news. But local media news outlets, there's only a few left out there. And, as they go away, that information gap, it just gets bigger and bigger, and people get information. Well, frankly, from a local perspective, you're not going to get that information at all. I mean, there's plenty of towns and cities in Connecticut now that have no reporters covering them. So that leaves government to do and make decisions without any sort of spotlight or sunlight on them. I think there was a study that actually said that, communities that don't have a local reporter covering them, their budgets tend to be more often out of balance, more corruption in those communities because no one's asking questions or even covering local meetings. So local news is crucial, I think, to a democracy. And despite the struggles of the industry, it's not that people don't want the information. It's the business model of the print product, which is increasingly going away as more people go digital. Newspapers and news media organizations have had a harder time trying to monetize the digital product, although there's more progress in that in recent years. But the product itself and the information itself is important, and people still want that information. It's a question of whether they're willing to pay for it in a digital format rather than a print format.
Yeah, no, that is so interesting. We've seen a number of the publications here in Connecticut go online, all of them at this point, if they want to survive in a lot of ways. Also, just a note on local news, I always say too, when there's a big story that the national networks are also running into, I always go and look at the local reporters because they're the ones that have the most sources. They know the beat, they know what's going on. And when those national news organizations also leave, it's the local reporters who are on the ground and who follow up and know who they're talking to and know the area. Okay,
sure,
so let's go. Go ahead.
Oftentimes local reporters that are breaking those stories that make national news as well.
This is true. This is true, Greg. Okay, so let's get back to the topic that we started with, and that is the vaccine mandate from President Biden. What's the reaction? I've heard that it's been mixed reaction in the business community, and we know that there are a lot of businesses who are already saying that their employees have to get vaccines. But what are we hearing? Because it raises a lot of questions on how to implement it, right?
Yeah, and obviously Biden made this proclamation because the overall national vaccine rate, I think, was hovering around 50%. In Connecticut, we're at close to 70% at this point. So Connecticut's well ahead of the game in terms of overall vaccinations. Employers in Connecticut have been lukewarm about a mandate up until probably a few weeks ago. For the most part, employers have been encouraging vaccinations, but they haven't been requiring it. We're starting to see some shifting in that in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I would say, largely because of the spread of the Delta variant. Also, Labor Day was a key day for a lot of companies wanting to bring their employees back. I know a lot of workers sort of have gotten used to working from home and they like it, but employers really want their workers back in the office to create an office culture. Not 5 days a week anymore. I think if you're an employer and you're going to ask your employees back 5 days a week, you're going to have a hard time recruiting and retaining talent. But 2 or 3 days a week back in the office for those meetings and things like that. Employers were hoping to do that around Labor Day. Many employers pushed that date back because of the spread of the Delta variant. So because of that, I think in the last few weeks, you've been starting to see some employers in Connecticut saying, yeah, we're going to make the vaccine a mandate. Liberty Bank was one. A manufacturer in Pomfret called Lucent Companies just did a mandate. Bloomfield Health Insurer, Cigna, which is one of our biggest employers in the Hartford region of the state, just did a mandate. So I think you're starting to see more employers head down this path. Interestingly, the Connecticut Business Administration Industry Association did a survey just before Biden announced the mandate. And in that survey, 52% of respondents who are business people said they're supportive of a government-issued vaccine requirement, while 37% were opposed to it and 11% weren't sure. So a slight majority said they were good with it and they supported it. But 37 to 40% said they were opposed. So that's still a big number out there.
Interesting. What about the vaccine passport idea? We know that Governor Lamont had originally not been warm to the idea. That seems to be changing, but according to him, it was more because businesses were requesting a place where they could go and verify if someone got a vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're a restaurant, a bar, if you're a company hosting an event, do you really want somebody at the door, making people take a piece of paper out to show their vaccine? It's put a lot of people in uncomfortable positions. And so I think if there was a mandate from the government where you have to show vaccination, it would take the pressure off of a company saying, ooh, do I really want to sort of mandate this and check people at the door when other companies aren't doing it? So I think they're looking to the state to sort of give a mandate and to take some pressure off of their back. So I think earlier this week, Governor Lamont became more open to it. New York City has a vaccine passport mandate to go into a bar, restaurant, or events. And now Governor Lamont said he's looking at maybe a digital vaccine passport where you download an app and that could be downloaded to a smartphone and they could show it at the door of a restaurant or bar. He hasn't made a mandate of that yet, but I could see that coming the next few weeks, especially the Delta variant. The Delta variant has gotten under better control in Connecticut, but it's still, the infection rates are still higher than they were when vaccines were really kicking in the spring and early summer.
Greg Bordonaro, editor of the Hartford Business Journal. I've been wanting to have you on, and I'm really glad you joined us this morning. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have you on again. And check out CBIA's podcast. They're celebrating their 100th episode. I was able to join Chris DiPentima, who's the CEO and president, ask him a few questions that are business related as well, including about President Biden's vaccine mandate. So check that out. I think it's released today on Monday. All right, that does it for us on The Real Story. If you want to watch these segments again, head to fox61.com or download the Fox 61 app and watch The Real Story every Sunday at 10 a.m. right here on Fox 61. Have a great morning.